frontier is the extreme limit of understanding or achievement in a particular area. A frontier in history is an extreme boundary that is to be passed. Throughout the history of the United States, there have been many frontiers being pushed. For example, there were physical frontiers like pushing the boundaries of the US and exploring the West, and there were scientific frontiers like the Industrial Revolution, where technological innovations were booming. What is another idea that expanded the frontiers in history? Compulsory education.
Compulsory education is a period of education that is required of all people and is imposed by the government, and its creation in the United States expanded the frontiers of history by reducing the incidence of child labor, increasing economic development, and strengthening democracy. To understand the effects of compulsory education in the United States, we have to go back to before education was required.
In the beginning, not all children were allowed to attend school. Children were excluded based on their race, class, income level, gender, geographic location, country of origin, and several of the other main reasons people are discriminated against in modern society. Due to these constraints, the primary children being educated were white and came from wealthy families. For these students, there were a variety of different educational systems. To name a few, there were church-supported schools, local schools organized by towns or groups of parents, and there were dame schools, which were run by women in their homes. These schools were optional and could be expensive, but soon enough, this would change.
This is Horseman. He is known as the father of the public school system and was a major force behind the establishment of unfilled school systems in the 1800s. This man and many other people were behind the creation of arguably one of the most foundational systems in America. He claimed that a common education would be one of the strongest forces of civilization.
He said that if all children had easy access to education, society would be better off. He also believed that democratic participation would increase. Mann was one of the first people to train teachers and attempt to professionalize teaching. He helped create the first U.S. public school in Massachusetts.
He proposed that schools be funded by the government through taxes and started the first school in the U.S. In the immortal words of Nelson Mandela, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. So let's dive deeper into how compulsory education made an impact on the nation.
An important impact of compulsory education was that it helped to end child labor. Throughout the 18th century, child labor was a prevalent issue. Many families needed the help of their children to pay bills and put food on the table. Factory owners took advantage of these working children and worked them hard for long hours with little pay. The working conditions were horrible, and it was common for children to be injured due to lack of safety measures and equipment. According to Binghamton University, children were viewed as a part of nature, meaning they were exploited for capitalist gain, which made it very easy for employers to pay them less. When children worked in these conditions, it usually led to them working the same type of jobs for the rest of their lives. Sometimes they got seriously injured or ended up dead. Because the rich could afford to keep their children out of child labor, the rich got richer while the poor stayed in their poverty trap.
1.75 million children under 16 were working in these conditions by 1900.
One example of a dangerous job for children was being a breakable in coal mines. The child laborers would spend hours crouching over, picking out the refuse from the coal. Sometimes even worse, a boy could fall down the chute and later be discovered dead, or a young child could be torn apart and killed by the machinery. Children were not able to live a normal childhood, and they were set in poverty traps before they could even read. The working conditions children experienced were disgusting and inhumane.
An important factor in ending child labor was compulsory education. Because education was made compulsory, it meant that it was illegal for children not to go to school.
When Horseman founded the first public school, laws were passed that fined parents who refused to send their children to school, and parents could even have their parental rights revoked. These set up modern-day consequences for the skipping of school. In many states, parents may have revocation of public assistance, such as welfare and food stamps, if they fail to send their children to school, according to the Department of Education. These laws have helped to keep children from being available to be involved in child labor. Public education helped push beyond the time where children were exploited for economic goals. This brings us to our next point, which is how compulsory education helped the nation develop into an intellectually diverse and economically prosperous nation. Sarah Ipatenko, who has a bachelor's degree and master's degree in education, writes that laws requiring children to attend school are, at their core, essential. When children regularly attend school from an early age and through high school, they're more likely to get a better job, break the cycle of poverty, and send their own children to high-quality schools. We see that keeping children off the streets did not just keep them out of child labor, it actually increased their chances of becoming economically prosperous. The cycle of poverty can be broken through education.
Graduation Alliance highlights the importance of education when they state that education paves the way to increase employment opportunities. Even without a high school diploma, students who have basic literacy skills are more employable than those who lack these skills. Literacy enables people to complete job applications, apply for aid, get driver's licenses, and more. If there are not enough people that have an education, there will not be enough people to take on highly skilled jobs. There will not be enough people qualified to actually run America. There was a time when the few educated people were white males.
Compulsory education ended this era because it ensured all people not only have access to education, but they are required to be involved in a program that allows them to be successful in life. A healthy nation is one run by intelligent people. This brings us to our final point, democracy. Because nearly all Americans are given education and boundless opportunity, democracy is solidified. Although there is much discrimination, compulsory education itself has helped to eliminate a large barrier of democracy. Now, all American children can be involved in some sort of education. Compulsory education pushed American frontiers beyond a time when only the rich could make a difference. For example, it is highly likely that without compulsory education, minorities like President Obama, Kamala Harris, and Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor may not have risen to their high positions in our democracy.
When people are educated properly, citizens are more prepared and smarter when it's time to make sound decisions that relate to our system of government and also in life. Making sure citizens are properly informed is important for education systems.
In schools across the U.S., students learn civics and government to understand the building blocks to our democracy.
To prevent the U.S. government system from collapsing, American citizens should be educated on the roles into this democracy, and also it's their responsibility to make decisions that can either make our nation better or worse in the long run. So for our future voters, they need to be aware on how important the roles are as a U.S. citizen.
Thomas Jefferson said that citizens can reach their full potential through education. Having intelligent citizens is one of the many things that allows for a healthy society. This is another reason why compulsory education expanded an American frontier. By allowing nearly all citizens to become educated, society was able to run more efficiently. Think about it this way. Without educated citizens, who would be capable of running the nation? The thing is, it's not just about having any type of school. Without public education, many people would not be able to afford to learn. Only the wealthy would be educated, which means that the vast majority of those who could run our democracy will be those of the upper, middle, to upper class. Democracy is strengthened because all citizens have equal opportunity to gain public education. TheMedium.com states that it is the very foundation of good citizenship. Today, it is a principal instrument in awakening the child to cultural values, in preparing him for later professional training, and in helping him to adjust normally to his environment.
When it comes to democracy, the frontier was that average people could not run society. Only the elite could. Compulsory education pushes the nation further for equality and justice for all. Compulsory education expanded American frontiers and jump-started a new era in the United States. Frontiers were pushed because the incidence of child labor was reduced, economic development was made easier, and democracy was solidified. The economy is benefited because instead of working low-paying jobs their whole lives, children were able to gain information they needed to get high-paying and high-quality jobs. Lastly, the democracy became solidified because it prepared and educated people on how the system of government works, so people can understand this democracy and vote people knowing their intentions in this country. Compulsory education expanded the frontiers of education and intellectual development in the United States.